I want to start out by saying something that might be controversial. It might be scary and it may hit home for some of you in a very real way. Are you ready? I think we all have that one drawer in our house that we consider to be a junk drawer. You know the one I'm talking about. Sometimes it's in the kitchen or it's in a bathroom or in the garage. Wherever you keep it, I guarantee that you have something like this in your home. Maybe it's not a drawer, maybe it's grown to be multiple drawers, or maybe it's a cabinet or a bin. It's that place that you hope guests never accidentally stumble upon looking for something, but it's that place that you know you can always look for whatever it is that you need. You know what I'm talking about? We call it a junk drawer, but really it's a vessel that we have to be a catch-all for the things that we might need. And they're helpful things like light bulbs or a screwdriver, AAA, AA, D batteries, Post-it notes, or a pen, whatever. It's this multi-purpose place for odds and ends that we know we might need. We just don't know when and what we'll need. Maybe you have a jar around the house or a basket that you use to keep loose change. Maybe there's a bowl by your front door, so you put your wallet and keys in it in order to not forget them every time you walk out the door like I do. We have these physical compartments that we create to fill with things that we need, and sometimes we fill them with things we don't need, but we hold on to them until it gets full. And the same can happen to us emotionally in our lives. There are things that we compartmentalize in our hearts and in our minds that, while they may not be physical things, they're things that take up space and energy and emotion. This is really what I want to talk about today. We all live complex lives. We have responsibilities, whether that comes in the form of marriage or children or finances or work responsibilities. They all take up space in our lives. And as much as those things can bring joy to our lives, they can also bring stress and anxiety and anger and all sorts of unhealthy emotions that can quickly fill up these compartments if we let them. At the end of last week, I had a real challenging interaction with a coworker, and it left me disappointed and frustrated, and honestly, I just wanted to give up and start looking for something else. It was one of those circumstances where you said and heard one thing, but they felt and heard something different. Ultimately, it was a conflict of communication, but that made me feel like I wasn't being heard, that my actions weren't seen, and I let it eat away at me throughout this last weekend. So I had taken this negative experience and let that occupy and fill up so much of my headspace in the compartments that it affected my weekend. My wife could tell something was wrong, and what I was feeling on the inside was starting to show on the surface. I felt defeated and broken, hard-pressed, battered, and apparently I showed it as well. So as I took time on Sunday to prepare for this devotional, I opened up the writings of Paul in 2 Corinthians. Many of you know this is Paul's message to the church in Corinth. And as he was writing letters of encouragement and reminders of God's love to the church and God's power and what Jesus laid out for our future, he was writing to a church that was surrounded by people who were teaching their own ways, their own gods, and addressing the reality of these false teachers. Chapter 4, verse 4 says, "The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as servants for Jesus' sake." Paul's saying that what's going on right now, what's happening in society, what people are involving themselves with, is distracting from the bigger picture. They're letting trivial things fill up the vessels of their lives. Verse 6 goes on to say, "For God, who said, 'Let light shine out of the darkness,' made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ." It's easy for us to get caught up with the complexities of our lives, to get upset or frustrated at ourselves or at others when we're too focused on the things that do not create the light. When the words of our mouths, our actions, and our emotions are a result of our own doing and not filtered through Jesus and the light that he's shown in our hearts, we need to check ourselves. We need to reflect on what really matters, these treasures that God has given us and the price that Jesus paid in order for us to live extraordinary lives. Verse 7 is where I want to focus on. It says, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. We're perplexed, but not in despair. We're persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body." Listen to this. "For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may be revealed in our mortal body. So then death is at work in us, but life is at work in you." What a powerful reminder, a reminder that we are human and human things will always trouble us, but we ultimately have been called to live a life that's bigger than human things. Death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. Maybe it's time to reassess your junk drawer, or clean out the compartments in your life that just build up to hold stuff over time, to not dwell on this negativity or be blinded by what's happening in the world because we have these treasures in jars of clay. It's something so much more important and profound that really shapes how we should be seeing every other compartment in our life. Paul isn't saying we won't experience the human things. In fact, he knows that from the people he was writing to at the time to where we are today, we will always be hard-pressed, perplexed, persecuted, and struck down. We are those jars of clay. We hold things of value, the treasures of Jesus' love. Life can get us down if we let it, and it's a real short journey from life to death if the life and the light of Jesus is not at work in us. This last Monday marks 7 months since Pastor Jim, my dad, passed away. And for the last 7 months and really the last 2 years, I've let feelings of sadness and anger and loss fill up my jar. But I'm so fortunate to have spent the last few months with him and really my entire life, because I could see how he filled his jar, and many of you were part of that. Like Dad, we should all live our lives in a way that reveals Jesus to others. And Paul wraps up chapter 4 by saying, "Therefore we do not lose heart, though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we're being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what's seen, but what's unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what's unseen is eternal." What are you filling your life with? What are you allowing to take up space in your jar of clay? We are human and will experience human things, but if we let God's love and his light shine in our lives, the darkness has nowhere to go.